Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to the marketplace. Coming up this afternoon, city depreciation contributing to high cost of goods clearance at the ports. We hear from Executive Chairman of the Ghana Link Network, Dr. J.
It's normal rate. You get your this thing, but if it's raised, that's not me. It is customs that will use the dollar. If the dollar comes down, your duty also comes down.
Also coming up, more oil marketing firms set to increase prices at the pumps as a response to the 5% increase in the Unified Petroleum Price Fund margin as directed by the National Petroleum Authority. My name is Darryl Kwal. Thanks for being with us. Details coming up. Well, first up, Executive Chairman of the Ghana Link Network, Dr. J, has said that the introduction of the Integrated Customs Management System ICUMS platform has improved the efficiency of goods clearance processes at the ports. However, he says the depreciation of the city has contributed to the high cost of duties on imported goods. He has been speaking to Joy Business.
Integrated Customs Management System platform has transformed customs processes in Ghana by integrating all stakeholders involved in the customs clearance processes. According to the Executive Chairman of Ghana Link Network, Dr. J, the system has significantly enhanced the efficiency of port operations.
Before, you can bring your goods and it take you 2 weeks to clear. Now, Ghana Link, whenever you ship it from China, everything is already in the system. So we can give you your final declaration this thing for you to go and pay your duty before the container gets here. So most of the people that want to use it proper, they pay their duty before the container comes. So when the container comes, it will not take maybe a day for you to clear it.
Dr. J also attributes the high cost of import charges at the ports to the depreciation of the Ghana cedi against the dollar.
And customs determine the duties on the dollar rate. So you will use dollar to buy, customer will use dollar to calculate your duty for you. So actually, if the dollar is normal rate, you get your this thing. But if it's raised, that's not me. It is customs that will use the dollar. If the dollar comes down, your duty also comes down.
Integrated Customs Management System represents a major shift from the previous system where valuation and classification and risk management and payments were managed by different entities.
Now, more oil marketing firms are set to increase prices of petroleum products at the pumps. George Afe has more on how this move could also trigger increases in transport fares.
These companies are also going this way after some of the major oil firms took the lead to increase their prices by some 5 pesos per litre. The move is in line with directive from the National Petroleum Authority for the various players in the industry to increase their Unified Petroleum Price Fund margin by that amount. One is not sure whether this development could push some of the transport operators to increase fares due to the rising cost of their operations. Some of the oil marketing firms have told Joy Business that prices could have been left unchanged or at the old values hadn't been this margin going up. Some have also questioned the timing for this move by the industry regulator, looking at how an increase in fuel prices could impact on the larger economy.
Now, Sinapiaba Savings and Loans Limited is adopting strategic financial reforms and partnerships to stay buoyant in the lending industry as the country grapples with macroeconomic instability. The recent cedi depreciation and economic difficulties are taking a toll on businesses in the country. But Chief Executive of the Microfinance Institution, Tony Forson, says strategic investment capital from their international partners is cushioning the company as it commits to supporting the marginalized in society. He was speaking at the 30th anniversary ceremony of Sinapiaba.
Yeah, the summer because some are not me, my friend, Mrs. skills in the
That is the success story of Martha Awintima, a beneficiary of the Snapiaba Youth Apprenticeship Program, who traveled from the Ahafo region in a quest to earn a living in the Ashanti region. Snapiaba Savings and Loans, a microfinance institute, has since its 30 years of existence transformed the lives of individuals and small-scale businesses in Ghana. Despite the country's economic woes, the Microfinance Institute remains resolute and committed to supporting businesses blossom. CEO of Snapiaba, Tony Fosu, says the company is adopting strategic means to cushion itself against the economic quagmire.
A lot of SNLs, we are supported in times like this by having strategic partners. We have strategic partners in the Development Bank of Ghana, DBG, who is able to give us, maybe unlike commercial banks, they are able to give us longer term financial capital for us to on-lend to these people. We have the government of Canada stepping in, establishing a project, a financial project for SMEs in Ghana. They invested about 19 million Canadian dollars. These are the partnerships that helped us to overcome the macroeconomic challenges.
The microfinance institution was the first in Ghana to adopt digital financial operations for cybersecurity. Deputy Director of Banking Supervision at the Bank of Ghana, Ishmael Adam, advised Microfinance Institute to embrace digital advancements while assuring of the Apex Bank's commitment to supporting financial institutions show up the Ghanaian economy.
You need to leverage the technology to design products that your clients will like and want to subscribe to. The Bank of Ghana will continue to support financial institutions. You are the financial institutions that are there to promote economic development and economic growth through the products and services that you turn out. And so we are there to support institutions. We are ready to support you anytime in your quest to grant credit, which credit will help in the transformation of the Ghanaian economy.
Spouse of the Asantehene, Lady Julia Osei-Tutu, commended efforts of the trust to support the marginalized in society.
This institution emerged during a time when there was a pressing need for microfinance, especially for those marginalized in society. True to its name, Snapiaba has exceeded expectations, growing beyond comparison, with direct impacts felt by 600,000 clients and countless more indirectly. Snapiaba has undoubtedly contributed to a better society.
The anniversary celebration of the company is on the theme 30 years of transforming lives, celebrating Snapiaba's impact. For Joy News, my name is Emmanuel Bright Kweku.
Well, speak of access to credit, Head of Enterprise Banking at Stanbic Bank Ghana, Eric Chiri, has underscored the need for the adoption of universal trusted credentials in advancing the growth and development of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises in Ghana to access cheap loans. According to him, this will enable banks easily access records and authenticate the eligibility of SMEs for funding.
Access to affordable finance remains a significant hurdle for micro, small and medium-sized enterprises globally, stifling their potential for growth and hindering economic development in countries that depend on these businesses. Eric Chiri, the head of enterprise banking at Stanbic Bank Ghana, believes that adopting universal trusted credentials will bridge the financing gap for underserved MSMEs.
Under the sponsorship of the Central Banks of Ghana and Singapore, and the Development Bank of Ghana, there is some conversation ongoing. They are developing what they call the UTC, which are trusted, universally accepted, trusted credentials, where we SMEs are being assessed from an ability to pay and an intent to pay perspective. And models, credentials are being built such that, SME, there will be a single source of truth in terms of trusted credentials that lenders can rely on trade partners can rely on, people providing suppliers credits can rely on to authenticate and validate which SME they are dealing with. And I mean, we must commend, I mean, government and other players across various sectors for some of the initiatives that these UTCs are building on as a backbone. So in Ghana, we are talking about our national identification, our addressing system, and those things. And all these things are being pulled into a platform that allows you to be able to, at a click of a button, be able to authenticate an SME as being good for business. And for banks, I mean, once those basic KYC requirements are being done, and we are developing those weights that we want to place on certain attributes of SMEs, it gives us the comfort to be able to lend into this sector much more than we currently are, because that is truly our desire as financial institutions in this country.
This represents a significant shift from traditional collateral-based lending, which relies on hard assets, board resolutions, 3-year profitability records, long-term business contracts, and other collateral metrics that businesses must present before receiving financing and financial services.
You're watching The Marketplace. Time to talk tech. Okay, so we're going to begin with 5G infrastructure rollout, and Communications Minister Eslo Sekufu has explained that by directly awarding the contract to a newly created entity, the government aims to avoid challenges faced during the 4G rollout and expedite the implementation process for the 5G network. That explains why MTN was excluded in the 5G neutral network. But is this fair reason enough? Well, lead for Eyes of Africa, Henry Kobler, joins me on Zoom. Good afternoon to you, Henry. So we talked about this last week, and now we have an explanation as to why MTN was excluded in the latest move. Fair decision by the government?
Thank you very much, Daryl. So, I mean, when it comes down to infrastructure, when it comes down to the tech industry, internet services is very important. I mean, we had seen how the disruptions came in when we had the fiber cuts. And so generally, when we're having internet services coming into the country, I think that it's one of the most essential services that we could relatively look at. And I'm sure the government really understands that point. And with the mistakes that they sort of made to 4G by sort of auctioning it to MTN and relatively just having almost about 15% work done, I'm sure that they're sort of looking at a better way where they can sort of approach this. And so, I mean, coming in with that understanding to say that, okay, we're sort of bringing in people who have the expertise to come together to create a company and award them the contract relatively sort of makes sense. But if we're looking at it in general, I think that there's a lot of backlash when it comes to it, especially when you're handing such a very key infrastructure, and most importantly, how you sort of hand it over to companies with regards to how they're sort of going to be operating is very important to stakeholders, and simple things as the citizen, we should sort of understand what exactly they're putting their money into. And so generally it looks good. MTN had already looked at saying that, hey, we want to actually roll up the 5G infrastructure already, and they were not given sort of the license to sort of operate. And that comes in for me as one of the key points where government relatively will start looking at how they could sort of own and make major decisions in this sector without really just handing it over to the private sector to make key decisions in that regard. And so, I mean, understanding that KNet, Radsys, Nokia, Tech Mahindra, I mean, all of them coming together, especially with them coming together and the Smart Infraco coming together to sort of form this company makes a big deal. For me, the major question is, what are the key details in this contract? I mean, what were the procurement processes that had gone in to select these people? Because, again, it's going to come back to hunters. As much as we want to just have the best, we want to just understand that what are the key procurement processes, what are the essential that they are sort of bringing on board? Are they key financial partners? Are they key gadget partners that are coming in? I mean, when it comes out to even the gadgets, I've seen Huawei really meddling up in and all of that. And security-wise, we would understand that some countries have taken them out because of some key security features, which they sort of have not taken in terms of the boxes. And so have we done those jobs to make sure that, I mean, they were handing over this key infrastructure to public-private sector, partnership agreements, it sort of checks box the most important things. Relatively away from politics, this is very important because we're all going to benefit for it in the next couple of years, and it carries most of our key data infrastructure and our personal privacy points. And I'm sure that the government relatively understands that, would have done some level of work, but it's better off when they sort of clear and put out the details so that it's sort of clear in that regard without having to go through all the sole source and issues when it comes down to political grounds and infrastructure grounds as well. But I think that it's actually a key point to know that it's a good way in the way where government is sort of bringing this, but we need to sort of check a lot of the boxes. How much is even being invested in is very important. How much of coverage we sort of getting, and what is the advance rate or the business sustainability rates that we're going to have, say, in the next 10 years. All of those key details needs to be put out there for the citizenry to sort of understand what we're sort of going to be paying to get our tech systems up and running, and also to get the whole ecosystem in shape to sort of compete with the outside world as well.
How does this change the dynamics in the telecom space? MTN was ready to deploy 5G in 2022. How would this move to sort of exclude it from the 5G neutral network impact the telecoms industry?
It depends on the arrangement. Telecoms have their way of always jumping on each other. And so if Airtel and Vodafone, which is now Telecel, sort of is sitting on the neutral network now in terms of the contractual agreement, I'm sure that there would be definitely some level of negotiation on the part of MTN and government to sort of have either a separate infrastructure, which I think would be nicer, enough to always not just have everybody sitting on the same network, whereas when we're having issues, it would sort of affect everybody. But if they're going to have to jump onto the networks for Telecel and Airtel, I think that it wouldn't be a big deal. It's just going to give Airtel and Airtel and Vodafone some level of good money in the run. But I think that it's all mostly comes down to how the agreement and negotiations basically go. And MTN would always never be on a disadvantage because they're already carrying almost about 60% of the market share, and they would always have to put their leg forth enough to make sure that they keep in that market share. But I think that in much of the agreements, so far as they were really in the position to sort of deploy 5G and they were not given the license, that should tell you that they were actually prepared enough to get into that sector. And so I'm sure it will just come up in a couple of days based on the negotiations they're going to have with NCA and the Ministry of Communication to have some level of roll-up. I think they can sort of deploy their own infrastructure out there and could still keep up their own share in terms of the market consumer, which comes along with them.
Talk to me a bit more about what you anticipate will be the next move of MTN.
Yeah, so I'm looking at how MTN is really going to have a bit of negotiations with Airtel and Telecel if they sort of have to roll in this. Again, I'm sure that they will also have their infrastructure ready enough to sort of get some level of licensing in it. The ministry has made it clear they are not going to auction. And so I'm sure that they will either be rolled into this particular contract. I'm sure there will be some level of clearance, especially when it's thrown into the Parliamentary Committee for Communications. It's going to give some level of clarity and, again, have some level of deliberations. Without it going to Parliament, I'm sure that's going to have some level of resistance coming in, and especially with this infrastructure. Generally, you can't exclude MTN. And so really, you would have to roll them in one way or the other. But I feel that MTN would have a very good time up when it comes down to putting the infrastructure up, and then also probably coming on to pick up some level of share in this particular contract with the next gen Infaco.
Okay, let's switch topics. Let's turn to the cryptocurrency markets. It's been a while we talked about the crypto market, but something exciting happening there. Bitcoin at an all-time high. You were telling me earlier, one Bitcoin going for 1 million cedis. Is that the case?
Very much so. I'm sure that when we started having conversations here on Bitcoin, it's been close to like 4 years. And so at the time where we're having these conversations, I'm sure that Bitcoin had actually dropped down to almost about $30,000 in that regard. And so now that Bitcoin is sort of up at $71,000, that should give you a very huge understanding that what if we had invested so much into this infrastructure, how would it have been? I'm telling you, it's always going to be my session to say that cryptocurrency cannot be pushed down. That's the future in terms of finance when you have to think about it. I was very happy that at the 3i Summit, Bank of Ghana relatively had opened its wings up to sort of understand and get conversations running around when it comes down to cryptocurrency. And again, I'm sort of sure that their sandbox is ready enough to sort of have players within the ecosystem being able to develop around the Bitcoin. And so even last 3 years, you had a Bitcoin. If it was just one Bitcoin, now you're basically rising almost about 71,000, which is like $1 million Ghana cedis for just one Bitcoin. Now, that's just not, it's not just hitting Bitcoin, it's sort of hitting a lot of the major infrastructure coins, such as...
What's driving the gains we're seeing?
It's a very normal phenomenon to sort of understand that whenever there are economic issues, people are sort of going to look at pushing their money. I mean, in Ghana, I can tell you for a fact that if people are not getting Forex to buy, they're buying Forex on crypto. And so people are sort of holding their finances on crypto now as we speak. And so even if you're buying a 1 USDT, if you had bought a 1 USDT, say in December, that would have just been probably around 13.5 in terms of the dollar rate. Now it's running around 16 on crypto. And so that gives you some level of assurance. If the banking sector is sort of not giving you the platform to sort of buy Forex and keep Forex as against our economic challenges, which we're having here, a lot of people are sort of jumping into that gains. And it's not just Ghana. We're having that phenomenon across a lot of the places. And so people are understanding that crypto becomes more of the asset where they can sort of trade, send to peers and all of that. I think that people are looking at how they could explore these factors, and that's where the regulator really comes into check and be prepared enough to make sure that they sort of either adopt this and find a better regulatory regime to guard this as well, because crypto is worldwide. You could definitely carry it anywhere you want to carry it and just push your money out. There have been some level of regulations with other countries and in connection with the banks. And so I think that we're actually lagging behind, but we can't let it go. If you're looking at the trend, it's really exciting. I'm sure that people within this sector are sort of having make a lot of gains, but quite a lot of people would also now be jumping in there. But what I'll say is that before you get into the crypto sector, make sure that you're learning a thing or two to make sure that you sort of understanding that sector before you sort of put in your money and not be carried about by the greed that sort of comes in. When people hear that, oh, now it's at $70,000, they really want to buy, but forgetting that there's actually a game play there which actually runs the coins as well. There are a lot of publications that are running, there are a lot of entity interest that are coming in to make sure that these coins are sort of gaining so much. Bitcoin now is a $1 trillion asset. And so you can't downplay it. You probably have to just look at making some level of regulations and getting people to be roped in.
Yeah. One last question. We've been talking about the depreciation of the cedi, and so I'm just wondering, could a cryptocurrency be a hedge against a weak currency like we've seen with the cedi? And we know that the central bank has been slow to adopt it because of the risks, but is it time we took a second look at it?
Absolutely. It's way over time we actually looked around it. I think that the Bank of Ghana relatively has started piloting the eCedi, which is a good thing. I've seen collaborations with Singapore on having to run that infrastructure here. Them putting almost about 100 million in there. It makes sense, but we're actually going against like $1 trillion asset, which is out there, right? And so it's better if we sort of understand what exactly is out there. How can we sort of manage to get people to run that particular asset? And if we're getting players to come in, how do we sort of benefit? Are we going to have some level of taxes that comes in? There are quite a lot of things that we can look at and build around it. And so I think that the regulator really is in the right position to look at it. I wouldn't advise people to just jump on these assets, especially because these are not assets that are owned by Ghanaians and are regulated directly within the Ghanaian economic space. But again, I feel that it's a global trend now, which you can't ignore. And there's been quite a lot of education around it. It's gone through the years. Bitcoin is past close to like 14 years now. And so you relatively can understand that for an asset to still be around almost about 12 years into 14 years, it makes sense that we can sort of look at developing around it and making sure that the ecosystem sort of connects with it. And we have some level of regulations coming in to be an innovation as well. We encourage people to sort of create and build assets around it and build infrastructure around it. I mean, I'm yet to see a very proper Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana assets being developed by Ghanaian and being hedged into different systems here, and even connecting it to infrastructure sort of like healthcare or education or ride-hailing services. I mean, it would be nice to see that you can pay your ride-hailing service with Bitcoin. I mean, it would not be really far-fetched, but I think that it can make some level of gains for us, and we can actually move from there.
Henry Cobbler, sporting a new look, your curly hair, I just saw it. Thank you so much for joining us. Henry Cobbler, lead Eyes of Africa on the marketplace. Well, some important news we are following for you this afternoon. The Locked Up Investment Holders Forum is picketing the Finance Ministry for a second time in 3 weeks in demand of their locked up funds at the NDK Finance and 3 other deposit-taking institutions. The group had hoped to meet Deputy Finance Minister Stephen Amwa, who assured of meeting them to address their concerns when he received their petition on their first picketing day on May 15. The meeting has since failed to materialize, prompting the group to reconvene at NDK Financial Services. Dr. Duanani Entry is lead convener of the group.
Yesterday that we did a picketing at the ministry. The Deputy Minister of Finance, Dr. Stephen Amwa, came to us and promised that they were going to get back to us. We didn't hear from him until Tuesday, the day before the next picketing, which was, we are going to do the next picketing on 22nd. So by 12:20, I had sent a letter to the police that the picketing was coming on the next day, which was the 22nd. Then afterwards, I got a call from the minister, Deputy Minister, Dr. Stephen Amwa, that the ministry has planned to meet us, but he has some official travels to make. So,
but did they give you a date?
We should let him travel and come. He's returning on 27th. So when he comes back, he would arrange for us to meet. Because of that, we decided to suspend the picketing from that 22nd and also 29th, because if you are traveling and you are coming 27th, it will be too close to 29th. So we suspended it for 22nd and 29th. By 29th, we haven't heard anything. Then last Thursday, I sent him a text message, one by WhatsApp, one by SMS, and said to him that we are still waiting for him to call the meeting that was promised. We didn't receive any response from the ministry, and that is why we are resuming the picketing, because we suspended it to give chance for the minister or the deputy minister to have that meeting with us. If the meeting is not coming on, then there is no need still holding on to the suspension. So that's why we are resuming the picketing today. And if once we have resumed today, we'll be picketing every Wednesday. If they want to meet us, we will meet them on that Wednesday. The Wednesday that we are on picketing, they have every right to call us and have whatever meeting they want to have with us. So I think the meeting is still, there's chance for them to still meet us. Since we are coming here every Wednesday, we can schedule a meeting on a Wednesday that we are picketing, and it will be okay.
But what are the demands again?
For the Ministry of Finance to make financial provision to enable the Bank of Ghana to revoke the licenses of NDK Financial Services, SIC Life Savings and Loans, SDC Financial Services, and Bond Savings and Loans, which Bank of Ghana has stated that they have become insolvent. And under the law, when a company has become insolvent, a financial institution has become insolvent.
Following that story for you, more news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. Copper blames fuel price increases on adjustment in UPPF margin. Also, GSE records 4 price gainers. T-bills account for 74% of volumes traded on fixed income market. myjoyonline.com/business. We'll be back same time tomorrow.